So she says, I win, you lose, you forgot. And he says, you mean that you staged this whole thing with the food and all that just to win the bet? And she says, sure. She says, you guys are so simple. You always get taken in. You never get it, you never see it coming. And he says, oh, come on. And I said, she says, actually, I missed you. I cooked this nice lunch. You didn't show up. You were late. I laid it out. I thought you were going to be here any minute. And then I just sat down and I pretended you were there, So I took a bite out of your side. I took a bite out of my side. And, I made this for you. It's your lunch. Come on, sit down. So he sits down and she eats his lunch. And he has a nice lunch. And then she walks him back down out of the house to the bus stop. He goes off on the bus to his work. And she, bye-bye, dear. And he goes off and disappears. And then she comes back and she opens the trunk. And here's this guy, completely passed out, completely, in a state. And she revives him and calls him out and says, I told you, mess with women's tricks, you get yourself killed. You mess with a stupid woman, you would have been dead. Now here's what you're going to do. You're going to take that book of yours and you're going to erase the whole thing. But before you do that, you're going to get down on the floor and draw a line with your nose and swear that you are giving up this project. Now getting somebody down on the floor with their head on, their nose on the ground and their ass in the air and making them draw a line with their nose is something you do with a little kid who's been really obstreperous. So she gets him down on the floor and makes him do this, and he swears, give up, I repent, and so on. And then she takes him together with his manuscript down to the little stream that flows. Running water in traditional Afghanistan consists of a little stream that runs through your house. And she makes him wash it all off, and then she washes him off and gets him gone, goes away. And that's Women's Tricks A. Safdar and his buddies, when they're telling this story, one of them says to the other, man, this is about 1983 probably. It was when the Marxists were in control of Kabul, and they were making a great deal of effort to get women into the professions. So women were getting educated, women were becoming teachers in greater numbers, they were getting roles in the government and so on and so forth. There was a real push to get women into public sphere and into work. And this is non-trivial, it's another story. But anyway, so this guy in this situation, the audience member is listening to the story, he says, yeah, man, women today. And the thing is, that's a traditional story. That story's been around for a long time. But in this context, uppity women, new problem. Anyway, so that's one. And then I went to tell one that was told by my dearest friend and main storyteller buddy, this woman, my age. When I met her, we were 28 years old, and she had 5 kids. And she lost 1 child only. She now has 8, and they're all alive, so that's pretty good doing in Afghanistan. And they all are married and have kids of their own. But anyway, at that time, she was a young mother and had been married at age 10, had her first child when she was about 13, 15. Totally unlettered, no chance to go to school, but very interested in all kinds of stuff, including poetry and songs and stories. She was a really master storyteller. So sometime in our friendship, which we had the first year and a half of my time there, and I've stayed in touch with her and actually doing oral history of the family at this point. But anyway, she told me this story, which she called Macrazan, Women's Tricks. That was the name she gave it. And she said once there were 3 princes, and this is where many stories start. And she said, this is one of her favorite stories. But anyway, it has a kind of, I should tell that one. It has a kind of a grim turn to it. This is a little darker, but maybe that's okay. Anyway, so there were these 3 princes, and they were, friends, and they were all married, and they were living together with their mother and father in their palace and whatever. And one day they decided to go out hunting. And as they're going out, the youngest brother's wife says, while you're out, could you bring me some Macrazan? And Macrazan means women's tricks, that's what it means. But the kid doesn't know what she means by give me some Macrazan. He said, oh yeah, sure, okay, I'll do that. So they go off and they go hunting and they do whatever, catch things or don't catch things, and decide they're going back home. And the young prince says, oh, I promised my wife I would get her some Macrazan. And And the two brothers, the older brothers, say, what are you talking about? You don't even know what that is. We don't know what that is. We don't know what she wanted. What's the point? Don't do it. Just forget it. She said, no. She said, no, I promise. Just tell Mom and Dad that I've gone off to do this, and I'll be back. So he rides off, and he rides, and he rides, and he eventually gets to the town, to another town, and he goes into the bazaar and starts asking shopkeepers, do you have any macrozan? And it's the way in the story, he uses the term almost as though, he really doesn't know what it is. He's just going from shop to shop. Maybe he thinks it's some beauty aid or something, who knows. But anyway, he's going from shop to shop, and the shopkeepers are all saying, I don't know what that is. And he goes and he goes, but he's very good looking, beautiful, drop-dead gorgeous kid. And he's dressed in a princely way, so he's very impressive looking. And everybody's going like this. And up in the top of the town, above the bazaar, looking down over the bazaar, there's a woman who is her own boss. She's the head of her household. She has a few servants. And she looks down and she realizes there's this crowd sort of going around the bazaar, following this one strange person who's going from shop to shop. And she calls one of her maids and says, go down and find out what's going on. What's the deal? So the maid goes down, and she gets close enough to see this guy, and he's so beautiful that she just faints dead away. Dead, bomb, out, because he's so gorgeous. And so she's gone. She's gone for several hours. She eventually comes back. This business is still going on. Make a long story short, the head of the house, the woman, she doesn't have a name in the story, but the boss. Anyway, she sends two more servants, and it's only the third servant, according to my friend Mother Zucker, who says she had sense. She was a very sensible woman. And she loved this boy, but she loved him as a brother. Seeing him, she really. So she goes back and she tells her mistress, there's this strange kid down in the bazaar who's dressed like a prince, and he's going around asking for macrozan, and nobody can sell him macrozan. So she says, okay, I'll deal with this. So she puts on her hijab, her cover, and she goes down to the bazaar, and she says, she's talking to him, and she says, I understand you're looking for macrozan, I can help you. And so he follows her home. And she treats him like a guest. She treats him completely properly like a guest. And what you do, if you're treating a guest properly, is you feed them, you take care of them, you keep them entertained, and so on and so forth. And you don't ask them what they need until the third day. And then you say, fine, what can I do for you, actually? And the guest, if they need something from you, tells you what that is, and you either try to do it, or if you can't do it, you try to send them to somebody who can do it. Or if they don't want to make a request to you, then they leave. So it's a 3-day, no questions asked hospitality, and then there's the issue. And so she does this formal hospitality for 3 days, feeding and whatever, taking care of. And then she says, okay, what do you need? And he explains, he says, my wife sent me to get macrozan. And she says, okay, I can do that. I can take care of that for you. First, what we have to do is take you to our little bathhouse here, and they shave him and put makeup on him and they dress him up really beautifully as a woman with a chadri, also known as a burqa. It's called a chadri in Afghanistan. And anyway, so she takes this specimen, who's beautiful and young anyway, and all dolled up as a woman, and she takes him to the king, to the court. And she says, Your Majesty, my brother is a soldier in your army, and you have posted him far away. And I'm supposed to look out for his wife, but I'm afraid that she's not safe with me. Something's going to happen. So I'm asking if she can be kept in your house until my brother, your soldier, comes back. And so the king, she says, sure, she can go stay with my daughters, and plenty of room in the harem. Just send her on back. No questions asked, no inspection, because that would be extremely rude. And so off he goes to the crown, dressed as a woman, and the princesses think it's another girl and treat her nicely, and they all drink tea and giggle and tell stories and whatever. vizier is the prime minister, basically. So the vizier's daughter, who's buddies with the princesses, comes by to see what's up because they have a guest, and that's always interesting. She takes one look and she gets it. And so she says, why don't you all come to my house for a party, for a sleepover, actually? And so she rounds up the princesses, a couple of princesses, and the guest, and takes them off to her house where they have another tea party and food and hanging out and gossiping and giggling and whatever. And then she puts everybody to sleep in her own little corner. And once everybody's asleep, she goes over and she taps the guest and wakes him up and hijacks him off to her own place where they spend a very nice evening. And he's been told, by the way, before he leaves his hostess, she said, okay, stay there for a couple nights, and then when you get a chance, get out of there and come back to me. So anyway, so they make whoopee all night, and then in the morning, he asks to be allowed to go off to the bath, which is something you need to do if you have had sex, because it's usually polluting and you need to get clean. So she says, sure. So she gets him a very nice manly garb and gets him dressed up in it and hustles him off to the men's baths by whatever means. And he, of course, goes to the men's baths, and then he goes back to his hostess, which is what he's supposed to do. And so he gets back there, and she says, okay, great. And he says, and she dresses him up as a guy, which you know what he is by now, and takes him back to court and says, Your Highness, here's my brother. He's back on leave, and he'd like to collect his wife. And the king says, okay, fine, terrific. So he sends back to the room, in his inner, which is where women are, and says, send out the guest, her husband is here. And the girls say, well, she stayed over at the vizier's daughter's house, she's not here. So they go over to the vizier's daughter's house, and the vizier's daughter says, oops, because the guy has disappeared. So she gets herself dressed up in a chocolate bag over her head and everything, and presents her in the clothes, because she has the clothes, because he's changing the men's wear, and puts on those clothes, and goes back to court, presenting herself. And a hostess says, excuse me, sire, but this girl was very beautiful. We need to make sure that there has been no switch. I need to get a look at this woman. So the king says, feel free. So she looks into the child and she says, wrong girl. What did you do with the real girl? Where is she? This is somebody else. And the king says, I don't know. Calls the vizier. Says, and so they finally say, look, we don't know. She's starving. She's gone. She must have run off with a lover or something. But all we can do for you is give you 2 royal brides in exchange for where the girl belongs. So take one of my daughters, take this, the vizier's daughter, who of course is more than willing to go, and you can, that's the best we can do. I'm sorry, we're screwed up here, but this is the best we can do, is give you 2 women in the place of 1. So the hostess says, I think my brother will accept that. So then they take these 2 women off to her house. And of course the vizier's daughter is perfectly delighted with this arrangement. The princesses, whatever, princesses tend to be a little clueless, some of them. But anyway, so there's these 2 brides. And he says, well, thank you very much, but, I'd best be on my way because I still need to find some macruzan for my wife at home. As you know, in Islam, 4 wives are permitted to 1 man. So the hostess says, you didn't get it, did you? He says, get what? She says, get what? That was macruzan. It was macruzan when I took you in disguise to king. It was macruzan when the vizier's daughter invited you to her house. It was macruzan when we took you back to the king to claim these women. And it was macruzan when your wife sent you after macruzan. She's got a lover. That's why she tried to get rid of you.